You'll happily pay more for one small bottle of water than for the same amount of gasoline that moves an entire car. And here is the strange part. The water inside that fancy bottle is very often just ordinary tap water. Tap water that costs a tiny fraction of a single cent, quietly sold right back to you for $1 or $2. It sounds almost impossible. How do you sell someone a thing they can already get nearly free at home? So here is the question hiding quietly behind every single bottle sitting in that cooler. Why would anyone pay a small fortune for water when clean water pours, almost free, from the kitchen tap? To understand it, forget the water for a second. You are not really paying for water at all. Break down that price, and only a tiny little sliver of it is the actual water inside the bottle. The rest is the bottle, the label, the brand, the shipping, and, above everything else, the story. Start with the water itself. For many of the biggest brands, it simply comes from a public, municipal supply, the very same water utility that fills your tap. They filter it, bottle it, and sell it straight back to you. The water itself might cost the company only a fraction of a cent per bottle to actually source. But the plastic bottle, the cap, and the printed label, that packaging alone costs far more than the water. And even that packaging is cheap compared to what you actually hand over at the register. So where does the rest of your money quietly go? Into something you can't see, taste, or pour. It goes into perception, the careful, decades-long feeling that this water is somehow purer, safer, and better. And that feeling was never an accident. It was manufactured, deliberately and expensively, by marketing. For most of human history, paying money for drinking water sounded completely absurd. Water was simply free. Then, a few decades ago, clever campaigns turned plain water into a lifestyle, a status symbol, a health choice. Sparkling bottles from far-off springs, glamorous adverts, and the shining promise of purity right in your hand. Suddenly, carrying the right bottle of water quietly said something about you, and people gladly paid for that. The real genius wasn't inventing a brand new drink. It was inventing a brand new need for a very old one. And once you truly understand that, every part of the bottle in your hand suddenly starts to make sense. The label shows snow-capped mountains and crystal springs, even when the real source was a plain city pipe. Words like pure, natural, and spring do enormous heavy lifting, while quietly meaning surprisingly little. The clear plastic, the cool blue label, all carefully designed to look clean, crisp, and expensive. You're not really buying hydration. You're buying an image of health you can carry around and be seen holding. And the pricing leans hard into that image. A premium feeling needs a premium price tag to feel truly real. Sell it too cheaply, and people would quietly stop believing it was any better than the tap. So the high price isn't a flaw, it's part of the product itself, proof to your brain of quality. Now here is the part that really flips the whole thing completely on its head. In many countries, the tap water is actually tested more strictly than the bottled water right beside it. The public supply is heavily regulated, constantly checked, and held to genuinely demanding standards. Yet people quietly trust the bottle far more, because the bottle has a brand, and the humble tap does not. A brand is really just a promise. And people will pay enormous sums for a promise they truly believe in. Then there is convenience, and this part, to be fair, is genuinely real and genuinely valuable. Cold, sealed, portable water, exactly where and when you happen to be thirsty, is worth something real. But convenience is only a small slice of the price. The rest is still brand, packaging, and belief. And shipping heavy water all across the world adds real cost too, cost that plain tap water simply never has. You are literally paying to transport something that already flows, completely free, into your own kitchen. Now let's step quietly into the room where a bottle of water is truly, actually designed, not a laboratory and not a mountain spring. A marketing meeting full of charts about feelings, not chemistry. Up on the wall, one single question. How do we make free water feel like it's worth $2? And the answer is never really about the water. It's about the label, the image, and the price tag. Design a bottle that looks pure. Print a mountain that suggests a spring. Set a price that quietly signals quality. Then spend heavily on adverts until the simple feeling of better water is just quietly in the air. The water itself never changed at all, only the story carefully wrapped around it did. And you buy that story, willingly, every time you reach past the free fountain for the sealed plastic bottle. Let's picture the simplest possible version of this whole business, written out on a single line. Take something almost free, wrap it in a story people will pay for. Then sell it back at a huge markup. The markup on bottled water can quietly reach hundreds, sometimes even thousands of times its actual cost. Very few legal products anywhere on Earth are marked up quite as steeply as a plain bottle of water. And it works because the raw material is everywhere, incredibly cheap and completely endlessly renewable. The perfect business isn't selling something rare, it's selling something common, dressed up as something special. Now turn it all around and look honestly at the bottle sitting on your own desk right now. You didn't buy it because your tap was broken. You bought it because the bottle simply felt better. You paid for the label, the convenience, and the quiet belief that this water was somehow purer. And for water that, very often, first came out of a pipe just like the one in your own kitchen. And none of this is a scam. The bottle is real, the water is safe, and the label is completely legal. The genius is that it never has to lie outright. It just sells a feeling around a completely ordinary thing. You were completely free the whole time. You just chose the bottle over the tap, exactly as designed, because a brand spent whole decades quietly making the free option feel like the lesser one. So the next time a small bottle of water somehow costs more than fuel, you'll finally understand exactly why. It isn't that the water suddenly got more precious, it's that the story around it got much more expensive. The water was never really the product at all. The bottle, the label, and the belief always were. Cheap water to fill it, a pretty label to sell it, and a high price to make the whole thing feel real. Sell a common thing as a special one, and you can quietly charge almost anything at all for it. And so the rawest, most ordinary product on earth becomes one of the most quietly profitable ones. Water falls from the sky for free. Someone simply had to convince you to start paying for it, and convince you they did. One glossy advert, one mountain label, one premium price at a time. So the next time you reach for the bottle instead of the tap, you'll know the real trade you're making. You're not buying cleaner water. You're buying the story that made you doubt the water you already had. The tap was never really the problem. The marketing just made the free option feel like a compromise. You didn't overpay because you're gullible, or somehow just careless with your own money. You overpaid because someone sold you a feeling and wrapped it neatly around the cheapest thing there is. Free water to source, a good story to sell, and a price high enough to make that story believable. An everyday, endless resource, quietly wearing the fancy costume of a rare and precious one, a whole global industry, built not really on water at all, but on how that water is made to feel. So the next time you pay more for water than for gas, and drink what's basically just the tap, remember, you weren't buying better water at all. You were buying the label wrapped around ordinary water. You went looking for something pure. They simply sold you a story, quietly poured into plastic,